So as you were talking, I had this little thought, because again, the cynic in me, of is there anything that you can see or know in relation to me that would make me go, oh, there's something in this? Or is that too much of me going, I'm trying to test you, and is that not fair?
What I think has happened is that I'm not reading you, but what I think has happened is that something has happened where it's you are looking for your purpose.
Mm.
And there is a I know we vaguely spoke earlier about cynicism and stuff like that, right? This is the bar that, this is apart from that. There is I'm not going to read you publicly because I don't think it's fair. But there has been something within you that now you're like, okay, well, what else is there? And I'm going to have a look at that because there is well, like with anybody, there's a calling, right? So, and sometimes we never get it, other times we do. You have started to hear it. Okay, this is going to go public, so I can't really say what I want to say. I don't want to be offensive.
Is there something in it? Well, I can edit out if need be.
I think that you've reached a point, I don't know, you are looking for something, and I think that you have had to look internally because you've been a little bit low.
Mm.
And within that journey has brought that loneliness, has made you reach out a little bit more. But it's also part of you doing what you're doing, all of this podcast, is to not feel that anymore and to understand why you feel that, and to also understand and to reach out to other people that might feel lonely. And that is your bottom line, I think.
Mm.
But that's just an emotion. So, that comes with it lots of other things that are involved with feeling like that. So it's sort of like, trying to find your soul alignment due to that. Knowing that you've done whatever, but it's not really felt that right. No, nothing has really given you that. I mean, what you do with the mindfulness and psychology,
Psychotherapy.
sociology, psychotherapy
Psychotherapy.
should be enough, but it isn't. It isn't enough
Mm.
because it's not you. You're not working on yourself. You're helping other people, but you haven't done the work. So that's why it doesn't feel enough. So, like doing the work, learning a practice, and I'm going to say learning a practice, you can poo-poo it. I would suggest you try it, of just being mindful, learning meditation, doing all of that, finding out who you actually are.
Mm.
But that's for everyone. That's not just for you. That's for
Yeah,
everyone. That's how
yeah.
we start, right? That's how we start.
Um,
And it's great. It's great to try. I have personally had so many different jobs and learned so many different things in my life because I view it as an adventure, not
yes.
necessarily that it's my soul alignment. My soul alignment is this, and it's always been there. I've craved off that for lots of different reasons because I love to learn as well. And that's great, but you're always going to get a pull back to what you're aligned to, to what you feel, and it's just accepting that okay, maybe it's time now that I can have a look at that. Do you know what I mean? Whether or not it does any benefit or not is irrelevant. It's actually making a decision. Like you were saying previously about people being scared of connecting to themselves, and there is a fear of that because it can open the can of worms. But it's sort of like when we can connect to ourselves, even in just a tiny little way, it opens up so many other things, you know.
It's really interesting that you used the word lonely, because two things came up there. Um, One is that I recently posted in my Facebook group. I thought I'm going to try and be a little bit more open and honest about what my experience is. And I did use the word lonely in there because I'm a single mum and I've got a 2-year old. And it's someone said to me about, oh, you'll never be lonely again now that you've got her. And I thought, really? there's something
That's
very
not true.
lonely
No.
sometimes, yeah, about having, having that responsibility, but not having the adult conversation, having a battle about, screen time and custard creams and not wanting to put a pajamas on or whatever it might be. That can feel really lonely. So it's interesting that
Yeah.
something I posted a day ago, and I know you haven't seen that post.
No.
Um, but I also was thinking in terms of belonging and this kind of exploration of you sort of being in this hippie camp and sort of being, the woo woo and all of that, and then sort of being in the cynical camp. It's like I'm not quite in either. So I could belong to both, or I could belong nowhere. And
Yeah.
there's something I think, you used the word lonely, but I think there's something in that kind of quest to find the tribe and to
Yeah.
feel connected. And I'm very, one of the things that I'm passionate about is creating community. And
Mm.
what that looks like will vary. But the thread, I think, is about community, which I suppose is the opposite of loneliness. So I think you have probably hit the nail right on the head.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that coming away from you personally, I think there's a lot of people that are lonely. And it's sort of like they everyone's trying to find their tribe, if you like. Sometimes it's I mean, this is where, like, going back to me saying about, oh, well, I'm going to look at mediumship, or I'm going to look at yoga, or I'm going to look at that deity or that whatever, very specific about our growth, right? Our inner growth. But it does create a box, and you have to, if you're going to do it, you have to do it with an open-mindedness that it's a learning process that it's just the start of you being able to connect, rather than well, that's it. I'm a healer. That's what I do.
Yeah.
Because I can guarantee you 100% that there is a huge amount of ego with all of these fields that you will, if you're not careful, be fighting in.
Yeah.
And that is really damaging. That can be really damaging. So it's sort of like, it's not like it's being, what's the word I want to use? Discernment, I suppose, of when you're going into these things. And it's also, then you'll know exactly, like you saying about you got a cynicism camp and then you've got a hippie camp. It's sort of like at one point you'll decide which one feels more aligned to you, and you'll go more into that, probably.
It's interesting when you talk about discernment as well, because one of the things that worries me is I often see people who are interested in alternative therapies and alternative ways of thinking, and they believe in all of it. And it's almost like there's no discernment and there's no groundedness, and it feels quite unsafe that it's
Yeah.
like, I'm going to throw myself into this and then I'm going to throw myself into that. I'm going to throw myself into the other. And
Yeah.
that worries me quite a bit.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do we practice discernment? How do we connect? I suppose it is through connecting with ourselves, isn't it? And how do we stay grounded in that? Have you
Yeah.
have your head in the woo woo, but have your feet on the ground. How do we do that?
Yeah. I mean, there are exercises to help with grounding. And I'm going to call them meditation because I don't know what other word to call it, really. If I say that, people will. But like just grounding yourself. So being mindful, actually, the whole thing of like being mindful, being in the moment. You can write journals, you can like say affirmations to yourself. And one of the most important things about all of this journey is self-love and self-care.
Yeah.
Because actually, in order to have discernment, true discernment, you have to go through a little bit of your own baggage, a little bit of your own shadow in order to reach that point. Don't get caught up on this hamster wheel. I'm better, look at me, I can do this, I can do that. That's not what it's about. And the more you go into it, so actually that isn't at all what it's about. But it's sort of, I mean, that's taken me, I don't know, 35 years, I suppose, to actually voice to say. But it's sort of like the main thing is if you don't love yourself and love the process of who you're becoming, then you can't really practice discernment because you're not going to know what is right for you and what doesn't feel aligned, what is truth and what isn't. Do you know what I mean? So it's sort of like going into this like full-headed, full-hearted, jumping in, but learning everything that you possibly can. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, it's not. But on the way, make sure you learn just about you, just about what you love, who you are, what gives you joy, the simple things of grounding, like walking in nature, taking yourself to a bath, asking yourself, asking your subconscious thoughts, asking where your thoughts are coming from, all of that
And I
on the
wonder if
way.
that's the difference, that for a lot of people, when we throw ourselves into things, it's taking ourselves out of ourselves, throwing ourselves into something external, and
Yeah,
going from a place of I'm not okay, so I need to do this, this, and this in order to fix myself.
yeah, 100%. I agree. Yeah, I agree. It's sort of like looking at something else to fill a void or to feel because you don't really know what that is. You're all a bit lost. And I mean, that is the journey of connection, isn't it? Is it we start before this because we feel a little bit lost for whatever reason, or misaligned or something. So then we have to look at why does that. But if you go into that with a complete bury your head, and I've heard horrendous things from people given to other people, you know, and you just think, why are you doing that? Have a net here, have a net here. If that's why I said about shadow earlier, if you're asking someone to open up and say, well, why do you think you feel like that? What is that trauma led or whatever way? Don't leave them, just suddenly leave them with all of this shit going on in their head. Do you know what I mean? Have a little bit, show them that there's joy, show them already that they are worthy of love and that there is this joy in order to be able to move past that shadow, in order to be able to feel more aligned to your heart space is far more opened. Do you know what I mean? So you can connect with yourself more.